Hello, this is a message for all British Columbians who care about nature, old-growth forests, and the diversity of endangered ecosystems in BC. Right now is the most important time you can speak up if you care about these things. The BC government is proposing a biodiversity and ecosystem health framework. It's sort of a mouthful, sounds kind of boring, but all it means is they're potentially looking at putting ecological integrity first in all forestry, land use, and conservation policy decisions in the future if this policy lands right, if you speak up. The dominant paradigm in British Columbia has ever been to minimize the impacts of conservation policies on the available timber supply for the logging industry. This biodiversity and ecosystem health framework may actually reverse that, which is essentially to put ecological integrity first, to ensure that the most impacted and the least represented ecosystems are adequately protected, while resource extraction activities are done a lot more sustainably in the non-protected areas. This is vitally important for the climate crisis, for the biodiversity crisis, for the economy, for our health and well-being, for First Nations cultures. So this is a first-rate opportunity to make the biggest difference. Two things are needed to expand the protected areas system in BC to become a world-class conservation system. One of them is financing, funding for land acquisition to support Indigenous protected and conserved areas, and for all the other funding needs to establish protected areas. The BC government and the federal government now have brought forward over $1 billion, and more is coming. So that part is being taken care of. But aiming protection right is the other critical component. Making sure that they're not primarily saving the least contested ecosystems that don't impact industry, but are making sure that protected areas focused on areas that are the most endangered and need the greatest level of protection because they've been neglected so long. So ecosystem-based targets are most important. Instead of just having a 30% by 2030 protection target for all of the land base, which is important to have an overall target, but you also need targets for every ecosystem down to the plant community, and that also includes forest productivity distinctions. Forest productivity distinctions means areas that tend to grow big trees versus medium-sized trees versus small trees. If you don't make those distinctions, again, what they do is they log the big trees and they save the small trees or save areas without trees. So this is a hill to die on. The latest conservation biology science, landscape ecology, and First Nations traditional ecological knowledge are vital to bring in to ensure that not only are the right areas prioritized for protection, but that you scale up protection to ensure predator-prey relationships, viable populations of all species, watershed integrity, including for salmon and for cultural keystone species, species important for First Nations, that this is all is put together into targets that are legally binding so that future governments or the existing government can't weasel their way out of these targets. Protected areas integrity has got to be upheld. So you can't move boundaries, you can't say it's a protected area and continue logging. So we got a tall order ahead of us, but you have until January the 31st to write your own personalized message for the official public input email. And also in general, you should send a message through our send a message tool so that all the political decision makers know that you care. Do those two things, and this is the most important time for you to speak up. Thank you very much.